in the background. I will start the demonstration by clicking Scan. This will launch the Kofax Capture Scan module. First, I'm going to create a batch and then click the Scan button. Since I don't have a scanner currently connected to my workstation, I'm going to import some previously scanned invoices from a folder. You'll notice on the left-hand side we have a tree view of each of the pages of our invoices, and on the right side we have a preview of the invoice itself. We have a variety of different invoices, each varying in a number of pages. Some invoices are single page and some invoices are multi-page. After we've imported our invoices, I'll go ahead and close our batch and exit the scan module. Next, we'll move on to our next module, Capture. As I mentioned before, this module is normally run as a Windows service, but for purposes of this demonstration, I will launch the module manually so you can view the processing. Remember, this module is going to separate our invoices into individual documents and automatically extract the data from each invoice. I also want to point out this module is normally run on a more high-powered server, so the processing time you see here is longer than to be expected because my workstation does not have the same resources as a dedicated server would. On average, each invoice page would take between 1 and 4 seconds to process when run through on a server. Now that Kofax has finished processing each invoice, I'll go ahead and close the module. Next, we'll move on to validation. Here is where exceptions are presented to the operator for resolution. First, you'll notice on the left side of the screen we have a tree view of our invoices. Notice how Kofax separated each invoice into individual documents, and we can see the single and multi-page invoices. On the far right side, we have a preview of the invoice. In the middle column here, we have our extraction results. Also looking at the tree view again, we can see some invoices have question marks while other invoices do not. The invoices with the question mark are the exceptions and require our attention to validate the extracted data. The invoices without a question mark do not need to be validated by an operator, and all data from those invoices were confidently extracted by Kofax. Let's take a look at our first invoice. At the top here we have our vendor information. Kofax was able to use information provided on the invoice to go against a vendor database and retrieve the vendor information. This middle section contains our invoice information and extracted data. You'll notice our first field, invoice number, is in red, and at the bottom here there's a message stating that the confidence level, 78%, falls below the threshold set for this field in 80%. What that means is Kofax was able to locate the field, but it wasn't 80% or more confident it extracted it successfully. So this field requires us to validate the extracted result. On the left-hand side of the field, we have a snippet. The snippet provides for easy reference for the operator to validate the field from without having to locate the field on the invoice. If we also take a look at the invoice itself, we can see the invoice number is located in the top upper right-hand corner. Looking at this field, I can see that Kofax did extract the invoice number correctly in 672556777. So I will hit the Enter key and move on to our next problematic field. Notice how we jumped down to the subtotal field and skipped over the date and PO number fields. Those fields were extracted above the 80% threshold and thus do not require our attention. Now that we are on our subtotal field, our message below states that the subtotal plus tax plus shipping plus any additional charges less any discount do not match the total amount extracted field. So we need to take a look into these values. Beginning with the subtotal field, I can see that that is correct. Our tax field is also correct. Our shipping field is correct. I don't see any discount on this specific invoice, but I do see additional charges, also labeled as miscellaneous charges, and a total of $5. So what I can do is either manually type in 5.00 or I can single click on the value and have Kofax extracted into the field. After I complete this, I'm going to press the Enter key, and you can see that we moved on to our next invoice. We were able to move on because our sums less our discount do match the invoice total, and thus we were brought to our next exception invoice. On this invoice, we have one field in red which requires our attention. our confidence level fell below the threshold, and you can see the reason as to why was because some of the numbers are faded and thus Kofax couldn't confidently read them. But we see Kofax did extract the data successfully, and I'll confirm this by pressing the enter key and moving on to the next exception invoice. Here we have one field in red, PO number, and Kofax didn't extract a value, and this is a required field. Looking at the invoice, I can see that there is a line through the words purchase order number. It is this anchor Kofax is using to locate the field and the value it needs to extract. Because of this line, Kofax could not read these words and thus could not locate the value on the invoice. So what I can do is, just like before, is I can single click on the field, have Kofax extract it, and go ahead and press the enter key. Now you see that all the documents in our batch are valid, meaning the rest of our invoices, all the fields were confidently extracted, and we can go ahead and close this batch. So I'll click OK. And we'll close the validation module. Next, I'll launch the Kofax Learning Server. For this demonstration, we didn't actually train Kofax on any new invoices. However, if we did, this module would then export those invoices into our invoice knowledge base, and we could use those invoices the next time around. And then our final step in our process is our release. Here's where we're going to release our invoices and our metadata into our backend repository. For this demonstration, I'm just releasing into a simple folder, and I'll navigate to that folder now to show you where the invoices are. So here we have a simple comma delimited text file that contains all our extracted invoice data. And then here in our images folder, we have all our different invoices. This concludes this demonstration of the Kofax Capture AP Invoice Processing Solution.